Hi, it's me, Bruce Dransfield, and thank you for joining me on this second Colour Services webcast. This is going to be one of two parts, and today this presentation is going to be on part one, the basics of CMYK profiling for a Zycon engine. There's too much to cover in one webcast. So next time we'll follow on with profiling and dealing with Pantone and brand colours. So let's step right in now and have a look at what we're going to cover today. We're going to start with some foundation. Sorry, there's going to be a little bit of science, but we're going to try to keep it to the minimum. But it's very clear to me that some of these very basic concepts are very necessary to understand for you to be able to move on and be successful with colour management. Then we're going to look at the practical, the actual meat of the process, what we actually have to do. And then finally, the real world application, building a colour workflow using our X800 DFE. Okay, so let's start with the foundation course. What is colour? Well, I want to make this a very, very brief discussion because this is a whole science, and we could be here for not just hours but weeks, let alone years. But I think what I see after many years in this industry is that printers think in CMYK and also Pantones. It's very black and white in their mind, what colour is. And I can understand that. And breaking this mindset is something that we need to do to move forward into understanding how we can work in a digital environment and a colour management environment. So the traditional mindset, I think, goes something like this. We have a visual result, which is the function of the separations plus the physical condition. And because you can't change the physical condition, if you want to change the visual result, then you must need to change the PDF or the separations. So changing a colour is a pre-press function. And we don't need to think that way with digital printing. We can take the same PDF and make it print with different visual results. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing we have to break is this concept of CMYK is colour. So let me try to illustrate this in a very simple manner. We have two pieces of artwork, and you see there is the red header on top of each of them, and they're constructed in the artwork using the same CMY separation, 100, 100. I would call this process red. And then we print this separation in an offset environment on glossy stock, and then we print in a newspaper environment on news stock. And sure enough, we get two different colours. So we have a unique colour for 100% magenta, 100% yellow. But we also have a unique colour for the same magenta and yellow value. So the very simple lesson here is when we're talking in colour management terms, colour is about what we see, not how it's constructed. So we have our two different colours, unique colour 1 and unique colour 2, And we've already illustrated that we can't use CMYK to describe the result. So we need a different method, a different model, if you like, to talk about the colour that we see. And in fact, we need to be able to describe every colour we see with a unique value. So in summary, colour is what we see, and we can't rely on CMYK to describe that. So there is a need for a method to describe every colour. And one of the most important things in the whole world of colour management is this one question. Mr. Customer, what would you like to see? So we're going to introduce something called colour by numbers. Human beings are very, very good at creating models or abstract ways of communicating very complicated concepts. So we have some easy ones here, meters for lengths, and we have weight, and we have hours and minutes for time. And for colour, we have something called lab, L-A-B. And what lab is, it gives for each colour a unique value described with 3 numbers, an L, an A and a B number. This means that we can describe every colour as a finite value. We're no longer limited to CMYK. And if you can define a colour, you can communicate a colour. So just like with our meter, we can ask for a meter of something being reproduced somewhere else in the world without actually giving a sample. We can ask for a colour by giving this unique number, this lab value, and giving that only as a way of communication. How do we get this lab value? Well, we use a device, photospectrometer or a spectro, and it works like our eye, but out of the back of these machines through software, we are given a LAB value. So we have our 2 examples, our glossy magazine and our newspaper, and we see that they have 2 different colour values for the red header. So in summary, this is what I want you to take away from the colour. When we discuss colour, it's what do you want to see? What do we want to see printed? We communicate this using LAB. We use a device called a spectro to measure this. And you know something? If you can measure and you can communicate, you can also figure out how to reproduce. So with that as a start of the foundation, the next thing we need to understand is ICC profile. Again, this world is very, very complicated and very vast. So we're going to keep it very simple and be focusing on CMYK printing only. So a profile is a digital file. Inside it contains colour information, LAB information about a printing process. Where do they come from? Well, there are industry bodies who develop these and give us in the graphic arts industry what we call industry standards. Now, these are just 2 examples. On the screen we have ISO coated, and this is a generalized color description of offset printing in Europe. And Graco, again, this is a generalized description of offset printing in the USA. And these are supplied with Adobe software, for example, Photoshop, Illustrator, and of course, X800 system. However, you can make your own profiles, and you need to be able to do that if you want to do color management. Now, the next thing you need to understand about profiles is that there is a duality to them. And you can ask a profile 2 questions. And question 1 is, what will I see for a CMYK value? So remember our process read in the file, and then if we have a profile of our offset and a profile of our newspaper, it will tell me the visual result of printing on that system with that input value. So that's question 1. And we can think of that as CMYK to lab or CMYK to color. So if we take our offset, we see there we have 3 numbers, and those 3 numbers represent that process color of red printed on that glossy paper. Now question 2 is the reverse. I know the LAB I want, but what CMYK recipe do I need to use on my device to make that happen? So I want this offset red, and I want to see it on my Zycon. So now I have to have a profile for my Zycon, and out of the back of the profile comes the answer. And you can see there we have 1% cyan, 99 magenta, 97 yellow, and 7% black. And the reason for the difference is that there are different processes with different inks, but with that mix you will get the same visual effect. Now inside the X800 workflow, which is attached to every Zycon, we have a CMS or Color Management System. And to make this work, you need 2 things. First, we need a reference or an emulation profile. This is what you would like to see printed. If you like, this is our CMYK to color. On the back of that, we have our printer profile. This calculates how to make that color happen on our press. And if both of these things are in balance and are correct, we will get the correct result. Now, remember this. This is the key formula, the basic formula for sanity in any color managed workflow. And the thing to remember is this. If you don't like what you see, you have to ask yourself, is it a matter of taste, i.e. it's technically correct, but it's not what you would really like, then you need to change your reference. But if it's not printing correctly, i.e. your grey balance is wrong, you're seeing strange artifacts, that means the printer profile is incorrect because the calculation isn't correct. So this is the basic formula. What do you want plus how to do it equals the result. So some final considerations before we leave this foundation section. Your reference stroke emulation is what you would finally like to see. And you have 2 choices. You can choose from an industry standard or it can be your own bespoke process, and we can copy and paste analog process or another digital process. And you need to have a printer profile. You can't escape from this part of the equation. The newer the profile, the more accurate the profile will be. Okay. So that ends, and I hope it wasn't too heavy, the foundation section. So let's have a look at the practical knowledge you need to start to build a colour workflow. The easiest way to discuss this is in the form of a scenario. So we have a CX3 user, and he wishes to have cross-production with his FlexoPress, a perfectly reasonable request. And what tools do we need to perform this? Well, importantly, a consultation with the customer, and then we need the Zycon color control software, we need an I1IO spectrophotometer, and we need to deliver some training to that customer as well. So let's have a look. Step one. So remember the most important thing, the question, what do you want to see? And after consultation, we figure out that what he wants to see is the print looking like his FlexoPress. So these are the practical steps, just simply 1, 2, 3, 4. We provide a special test chart, which he prints on his FlexoPress. We measure those charts. We process that result in the software, and the result is our reference profile, our Flexo profile, which describes how his FlexoPress looks. So if you remember the basic formula, we now have this part of the formula completed. And hopefully to achieve the final result for the customer, we need to finish this formula by making our Zycon profile. So step 2, in fact, it's the same 4 steps. And the result of that is we end up with our printer profile describing how our Zycon engine is working. So now our formula should be complete. And in theory, we have all the pieces now to build a workflow. Just to recap on how we've done this, we've used Zycon Color Control, which is our ICC generating software, cloud-based, based on a site license, and it has many, many functions. So we would build a workflow in Zycon Color Control called MyFlexo, and we would upload our measurements, and we would get back our profile. Likewise, we would build a workflow for our CX3. We would also make a device link at this stage. This is for maybe some of the more technical people listening in, and we can make that from the reference profile we made above. And by uploading the measurement data, we will get a paper profile and a device link. For this presentation, I'm not going to go too deep into what a device link is. And so now we have the foundation. And the practical knowledge you need to understand is that we print, we measure, and we create a profile. These are the steps we need to undertake. And finally, applying this into our DFE. So we have in our hands the components. We have our Flexo profile, what we'd like to see. We have our Zycon profile, how to print what we'd like to see. We have created this special profile called a device link, which actually blends these two individual files together into one, and it has some nice advantages. It's not the right presentation to go into those too deeply. Other than what I would say is that it costs no overhead to the system to build this, and I personally think I would recommend them. And we also have our X800 workflow. So we need to join these things together to be able to print in the correct way. So step one, how to install the profiles on our X800. We simply, and this is very, very nice and very sweet, we simply drag and drop the profiles into any active hot folders. The system will automatically recognize what they are and install them in the correct place in the system, ready for you to use straight away. The next thing we need to do is create a new job ticket and possibly a hot folder. I would suggest a hot folder is a good way of managing your print work. And here we're creating one called SA paper. So we've installed our profiles and now we are going to make a new job ticket. And then finally we will go within that job ticket to the CMS section and the color management section. And we will load the emulation as my Flexo and the self-adhesive paper device link profile as recommended. And then we print. We're off to the races now, guys. We simply drag and drop our PDF without doing any changes to it to the SA hot folder, and our Zycon will print and look like our Flexo press. I really hope that you've enjoyed this presentation today. Remember, next time we're going to go a little bit further and look at profiling and dealing with brand colours and Pantones. I'll leave this on the screen for a little while, so if you want to take my email address and ask me any questions, please feel free to do so at any time. And so for now, again, it's me, Bruce Dransfield, saying happy printing, and we'll talk to you next time.